All righty. Hello and welcome everyone to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing. I am one of your hosts, Loren Gray, and with me is the ever famous and present Mr. Edward St Onge. Hey, Ed, how are you today?
Great. How are you?
Well, playing with
Welcome
new technology.
to Florida, by the way.
Yeah, I was about to say. I'm playing a witness protection program a little bit. I think I got too much light behind me. I was trying new technology. I got this really cool camera up here that I was hoping I would be the source code for today's show. But unfortunately, House is not allowing me to switch camera sources. So I'm literally running the camera off the laptop, which is creating a great backwash of light. But hey, you get pretty clouds and a dark face. So
That's
maybe
right.
I'm improving the video.
Well, it wouldn't be a show of ours unless the first 8 minutes was technical difficulties. So,
Is that not the truth? Is that not the truth? As a matter of fact, let me make sure I have the Facebook Live switched over to the new scene coverage here. And
hey, Holly. Holly joined us.
Yay. Let's make sure. Oh, Facebook Live, where are you? For some reason, it's not showing screen. So let me go over and play with this. With us, or hopefully joining us soon, will be Mr. Dean Schmidt with Derbysoft. We asked, it was a bit of a late minute, and I shared this with you, and I didn't share with the audience, but this week, HSMAI had their digital marketing retreat, and as such, not a lot of time spent on my part of researching a guest speaker after your command. By the way, I complimented you many times over and quoted you several times, as did Holly at the retreat, as to stats and things and questions and so forth. So even though they declined your participation in the new marketing board, your presence was well felt in the Digital Marketing Council.
The omnipresence. I kid about it. They actually did, ask me to apply again. So
did they? Good.
Yeah,
good. Because I was a little surprised that you would have been in any way rescinded, because it would have been just stupid for you not to be on there. So I'm being distracted because I'm trying to get my.
There's Dean. Dean.
Is Dean?
Come on in.
Why are you seeing people and I'm not? I'm in the chat window. That's why.
Yeah, well, you gotta
go ahead and invite Dean in. Go ahead and invite Dean while I'm taking care of this one. I'll ask for co-hosting here.
Dean has been invited.
Image slideshow, window capture. Okay. No, cancel. All right.
We should probably figure these things out before we take it on air.
It does. Normally, this is normal process, but for some reason, my screen is not deciding to go over and play. And I've been playing with this camera for a half hour, and finally, I was like, okay, I'm sweating out here. I'm just going to let the laptop run off of it.
Right. So, Dean, we sent you an invite. If you can chat us and let us know if it's working on your end.
And join in, that would be wonderful.
Hey, he declined. Wow.
Dean, you declined. What is it with you declining?
I don't know. I'm sending him another invite. Declined. He declined again.
Wow. Dean, I thought you liked us, man.
It says it's loading. Welcome to This Week in Technical Difficulties.
Yes. The ever-present fun of...
The first 8 minutes brought to you by us not preparing.
Unprepared. I feel bad. I usually have all this set up nicely, but hey, it's not Hosa this time. It's not Hosa.
No, it wasn't them last time either, I don't think.
Oh, no. The firewall was definitely them.
Oh, it was?
Yes. The firewall was definitely them. They went over and decided to...
All right, so I've hit invite to broadcast a couple times to Dean. Mine doesn't appear to be working. Why don't you try to invite him?
Invite sent. Dean, hit the yes button.
Say yes.
Say yes, Dean.
Oh, it says you declined again, Dean.
Dean, you have to really want to join us.
You have to want it.
You have to want it, Dean. I can't come back to the chat window while the loading screen is up. Don't come back to the chat window, Dean. Just go to the light.
Are you, Dean, are you on Chrome? Because I find that is the key here. I'm inviting Holly too.
Good.
Yeah. Dean, switch over to Chrome. So why don't we just talk about something while we're trying to figure out Dean?
Hey, well, okay. So whilst we're mixing up with this little bit of part of it, a recap. Google was at the retreat, and they gave some interesting stat numbers, and some of it was the progressive use of mobile. And of course, nothing that we haven't already talked about was the increased growth of mobile as the internet of choice. And their latest stat was it's close to 62% of total traffic now is mobile-based.
That makes sense. I mean, that lines up with what we see on the traffic that we get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's all the hotels.
And also in relationship to Holly, you can bring up some other stats on the site because you were there with the rest of us. Some of the I don't necessarily prescribe to this process that the council is going through. I'm not trying to be dissentient on a live show with this, but the conference is now going to be more about advanced conversation into the market. That there is a need in their eyes to have more logistics conversations that are with people that are more in tune with the functions within the digital marketing space than it is to continue to educate baseline from a conference perspective. Those who are using it on a daily basis that may not be as fluent in it. And I think it lends itself a little bit to the context of this show and what we use as content is that we have to provide, from an HSMAI's perspective, a very good, solid educational base beyond the learning center or the knowledge center, they call it, how to do this stuff. I mean, you and I and Tim and Robert have had conversations that have been crazy advanced conversations, and then some as simplistic as explaining PPC. There was an interesting statement that was made in the show, not in the show, in the retreat, that and this was from, I won't name the brand, but a large brand, and he was talking about his meetings with franchisees and ownership groups, and on average, 20% of attendees could not define the term PPC. And I thought that was a little scary.
Depending on the brand. Well, no, but depending on the brand, the on-property people don't have a lot of involvement in that. A lot of the brands, like the stronger brands, the brands that have stronger control, have field marketing or e-commerce or some form of that that does most of that for the properties.
But wouldn't there be a fundamental understanding of even the mechanics associated with, I mean, with such a heavy reliance on digital marketing as a part of the marketing strategy? Oh,
hey, there's Dean.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Dean.
You look like you're in a submarine, dude.
Yeah. Hey, this is a huge improvement. Lauren, you've seen what my camera looks like in most cases. I had to put a lot of front lighting on it just to get this much. Otherwise, I have this silhouette witness protection look going on.
Wow.
I've got a crappy camera. But
hey, Lauren, stay, like, whatever you just did, you got bright there for a second.
Did I? Okay, there we are.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Dean, you look gritty and dangerous.
You do, man.
I'm digging it.
Are you with Snowden?
I've got the headset thing going on,
Yeah.
Live from the Snowden down at the camp bunker in the Russia.
That's right.
What kind of camera are you running there, Dean?
Whatever's on my Dell Latitude.
Oh, well, that's your problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those who may not be aware, the reason why I've gone sans no logo today is I'm in respect of the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, which was actually yesterday. To be fair, it was actually yesterday, the 50th anniversary of the first episode of Star Trek on TV. So I had to wear my Captain Kirk command shirt just to feel good and authoritative today. So
not because you forgot to pack.
Not because I forgot to pack or that I've been wearing this for a couple of days. No, there's no other comments to that. Ed, thanks so much for bringing that back up. So, Dean, thanks for finally making it on and having the wow, you're going to have such an authority just from whatever you say is going to sound like, man, this must be true. He's hiding from everybody just to tell us this. So for everyone that for the show, we invited Dean Schmidt from DerbySoft for a couple of reasons. One, Dean and I were working together.
Dean, I believe, is frozen.
Dean, you are frozen.
Or he is incredibly gifted at staying still.
Dean, you are dead still, man.
He lost us.
Stoic. You're stoic. Yeah. Oh, Dean, you're frozen again. Well, to finish what I was saying, we invited Dean Schmidt with DerbySoft. DerbySoft is a meta search provider And I've been working with Dean, their client. I don't want to hide behind the fact that I've been working with Dean and his team for a few months now. But what Dean has done is put together a lot of webinars associated with Learning Craft. Derbysoft decided to start teaching people about meta search because there's, just like we were talking about, the lack of understanding about PPC.
Yeah, get into meta search.
You start talking about meta search, and they're like, say what? So it's even more of a mystery to most people as to what meta search is. So he put together some really good webinars associated with branding, what to do for budgeting for branding and non-branded hotels within the meta search space for 2017. And I thought since he just came off of that, it'd be kind of fun and on short notice because of the lack of getting into the show to this week because of the retreat. It seemed like a great fit to drag him on here and have him talk a little bit about some of the things he had in his shows, because he broke it down into platforms as well. And he had some neat insights on like TripAdvisor, Google, Trivago, Kayak, and then there's a lot of other meta searches that most people aren't even familiar with. There's a crap load of meta searches, actually.
Yeah, good save there, by the way.
Yeah.
Scrap. There's a scrap load.
There's a scrap load of them out there. So I'm not going to talk for Dean, but Dean's not here, so we're going to have to go back to the. So
let's go back to. So you were saying that a brand spoke up and said that 20% didn't know what PPC was. So obviously they were giving a counterpoint to the idea of going even more advanced in communication.
No, that's the sad part.
That was defending it?
No, that was in deference to it. Even with that conversation going on,
despite what you say,
despite what
right
you
and
say,
wrong,
they're still going to go and go for the conference to be a upper level conversation. And I know there's an audience for it. Do not get me wrong. I'm not thinking that they're shooting themselves in the foot or the head or something like this, but I do think that they'll
get better speakers that way.
Yeah, they're going to
they're going to get the higher end, like more flashy sounding important people in the industry to come out and talk.
Yeah.
Question is like, who are they talking to?
Right. Because two of the most popular breakout sessions of last year were the legal conversations, which was why you got quoted a lot. One of the reasons why you got quoted a lot from last week's show about the legal ramifications of so much of what's being done and how you're handling and addressing it as a service provider. But also was Google's stats and information about the validity of channel usages and so forth. And those spoke to a higher level audience that were looking from a 50,000 foot perspective strategy view of, okay, so this is how we have to guide our company. But I think from when it comes to the masses, there's this gap of usability. And it only reemphasizes even more what we talked to you about last week in the socialization of communication and of keeping the relationship with guests as they come to the hotel, even more so. Now, remember we were bouncing an idea about doing a digital summit here on the platform. Everyone liked the idea. They thought it would satisfy a little bit of this gap rift that's going on. Because even after the brand notified that 20% of all people attending who should be, by inherently attending those meetings, familiar with things like PPC and stuff, still didn't know what they were doing, that we should, in fact, have some way to communicate general information and understanding and training to the people that are hungry to learn it. So I'm all for moving
forward. Happy to fill the gap.
Yeah. You're creating business model opportunity of us to be able to bring a product to it.
Yep. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
No, listen, it's got to be tough when you're putting on a show as HSMAI. Because they want to be the thought leaders and, want to be seen as that. And that is how you get the most interesting speakers, which then does pull a crowd. And it can get nitty gritty talking the detail of how things work. And if you don't pull someone who's used to speaking to that type of audience, you can lose the audience pretty easily. So I get what they're, what angle they're coming from. If you want to make that what's seen as the premier digital marketing meeting in the industry, then you kind of have to talk about the sexiest stuff. But, to not have some type of for dummies breakout, I don't know. I think there's a reason there's For Dummies books for everything. I mean, it's some people are just starting, and we have to remember that most people, at least that I come across, so that may not be completely representative, but most people have a hospitality education that are working in this space.
Right.
Not a advanced marketing degree.
And it kind of lends itself a little bit to where they're looking at advancing the certification program for the digital marketing for HSMAI. They're looking to advance it, do another tier up. Now, ironically, when I first proposed it as a concept to them way back in the day when we first started trying to build this, I had proposed 3 tiers of it, saying, hey, we need a fundamental certification that people understand the mechanics associated with digital marketing. Then there needs to be a tier above that that has a strategic component to it. Okay, now that you understand the mechanics and the workability, you're responsible for its functionality and implementation beyond just awareness. And then there'd be a level above that, which would be an executive type level, which is multi-property or brand or soft brand specific guidance and strategy and logistics of it. And so now they're moving to the next
Here's
stage.
Here's the thing, Loren. I know you well enough. You didn't propose it that way. You probably proposed it as Padawan, Jedi Knight, Jedi Master,
That's
right?
Sith Lord, something.
Right.
Probably a few metaphors in there.
Let's be honest. Let's not clean this up unnecessarily. Let's tell them.
Yeah.
Let's tell them how it is. Again, True. They're in a tough space. Like they're learning as they're going, and they got a lot of different masters to serve. Sometimes things come slow.
The one that they have, though, is authenticity. They can be that unbiased, central core, Switzerland, as it were, kind of thing. Oops, I froze.
Yeah, you did. I can hear you still.
Yeah, but I froze. Weird.
It's a weird pose you're into.
Yeah,
there we
go. Okay, so now we're going to watch ourselves. You know when you do those video advancements when you're watching the news and you pause them and they got that weird look to their face? I got to make sure I blink fast and smile always because you never know when you're going to freeze, right? All right.
Exactly. So Dean's having a hard time getting in, so I guess this is going to be a grab bag show.
Yeah, it's going to be a grab bag show. I mean, we do have one news piece I wanted to throw in there, and also that Skift 250 thing. I still wanted. We never got a chance to talk about it last week. We can throw that into the mix of it. Dean, if you can figure out technology and join us whenever you join us, if you can, then that's awesome. Shame that I thought you had good bandwidth, dude. I thought you were. He's in Omaha, by the way. So you figure if anything's going to work well, bandwidth in Omaha should be one of those things.
Because of the stakes, or like
no, because Marriott's reservation center is there, and they paid for so much infrastructure to be connected to it.
You for themselves.
Okay, maybe it only went to their building. It could be that it only went to their building. Good point. It might not have been shared.
Fiber loops are generally purpose run.
Why isn't Google there? Google there? Anyway, so going back to the HSMAI thing just real quick is that I think that HSMAI has the ability to be that authority because you made an excellent suggestion. I'm going to incorporate into that budget simulator that we were talking about a couple weeks back that I made. And I'll share that link and we can talk about it if we want to. Where for 2017, it broke down if you were to spend by category into digital space, what the anticipated revenue return would be. Mm-hmm. And you said that what really value proposition you could provide is if you were to provide the KPIs of best practice for each of those categories so that from a user's experience, they could hold their agencies or their brand service providers or whoever they use if internally themselves to the standard of what that channel should represent for revenue return. And I'm literally building that and looking for inputs of best practices to add to that I'll send out to anybody that uses the simulator to say, okay, hey, these are the expected values that a annual email campaign strategy should provide. These are the expected returns on a programmed PPC non-display campaign should provide. So yes, to your suggestion, I plan on doing that. And I think that coming from HSMAI, they could be that helpful component of authority.
Thinking to that a little bit more, because if you remember, I suggested that you actually try to get that from the vendors. I think you should try to get an industry and a non-industry version where you can. So like email campaign, like poll the vendors that are industry specific, but then, go reach out to large organizations that don't serve travel as a major sector to give the kind of a range.
Yes. And
here's what's good for travel and here's what everyone else thinks is good. And is there a gap? Is there not a gap? But to at least help people understand that here's your average, and is our average a good average, or should you strive for more?
Right. And what would be some of the mechanics associated with optimizing that too? Just other things to consider in the process. That's probably going to be harder than actually the simulator build itself, because that's going to take a bit of a consensus. There will be differing opinions to it. One thing about this summit idea that you and I've shared, and so Tim and Robert as well, is that it's doesn't have to keep this magic balance of predominantly hoteliers versus minority vendors, because we've often discussed on the show that vendors have often the most accurate or usable data. The biasness comes in is that the data is often presented in the tool spectrum of the provider itself. So only vendors are only going to show good supporting data that supports their service modalities, and not always just a spectrum. So we don't have that restriction when it comes to the summit development, because I think that if we were to do a day summit and break it up into the categories of most interest, whether it be channel opportunities or awareness or however we decide to do that, we can bring in the best of market, whether it be vendor or hotelier, that can speak to the topic specifically and give good relevant data. Wouldn't be a sales pitch, but it would be a great way of presenting usable information based on the topic, rather than who sponsored the most or who wants their name in lights the most. It's really to keep the purity of the value there. So all right, we'll start working on task of that. The other points of the retreat were, as much as they were identifying the lack of baseline content needed, this desire to serve two masters of keeping the communication and the content to the conference very high level, also speaks to the fact that the industry has to start getting its collective crap together.
That was the outcome of the HSMAI meeting.
Yeah, one of the ones was just like, look,
get your stuff together, guys.
Get your stuff together, because really there has to be a steering. There has to be something steering this. It can't just be, we're in a report only mode a lot of times. We're constantly reflecting on what has happened without talking about what it means going into the future. We probably have more relevant future conversations on this show than most conversations in dialogue in boardrooms about their own business models, I think. They're so reflective of their current status that they forget about future. I think one of the ones that point to mind is when you're talking about the flatlining in 18 months or less than 18 months. And you were contesting it was going to be even less than that. I think Robert and I were the ones trying to stretch it to 18. You know, what plans are being done right now? What conversations are being done about next year's flatline?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, there are organizations talking to that. It's just, are enough? Robert Rausch, if you follow him at all, he's been talking about it for a year and a half, basically saying it's great that times are good. What are you doing now to prepare for the inevitable? But I don't think people like to think about the fact that good times end, and that's unfortunate, because it's not a bad thing. If you realize that every situation is temporary, you can use that to always work for you. Helps you through the bad times and helps you be prepared for them when times are good.
Yeah.
So, so I think there are people out there, and I think there are entire sections of the industry that are awake on this. Would I like to hear it mentioned more than hotels mention Airbnb? Yeah, absolutely, because I think that's more of a threat to your business than Airbnb is. So be prepared for it, and think about how you're going to be different, how you're going to steal market share when market is shrinking, instead of just claiming your percentage of the growth of a market share.
It came up, it's funny you say that. They came up in two forms of conversation that I thought were ironic. Every brand represented in the retreat echoed the same complaint: lack of product service awareness from their constituencies. That those who were using or brand flagged by them were not aware of the resources via brand that were available to them for anything, for most things. And I thought it ironic that they would be complaining about it, because they actually created the infrastructure of issue, because they created such a complex support system that you actually had to rehire them to handle it for them. I think of like the Emerge program with Marriott and the Edge program with Hilton. It's got so complex, and apparently, from what they're saying, the property levels were unaware of even basic fundamental functionalities, that they had to rehire the brand to literally facilitate the using of the products that were being made available to them via the brand. And then now it turns into a complaint that now that seems to be a problem, because now as the properties are waking up to the need for some of these things, the use of social platforms, the use of rich media or whatever it is, that they're hiring third parties, not realizing that the resources are also internally available with their brand relationship. And now that's creating duplicity issues for the brand, where now they have a whole section of task force chasing down ghosts and duplicities and competitive bid arrangements with agencies and everything else that's creating headaches for them. And I'm thinking, so where did that circle of problems start? Was it the brand by being so complex, or was it by the product, by the property, by their unwillingness to be so aware? I mean, since I got you cornered, I just ask you, because I love your opinion on that. What do you think? Where did that wheel start?
Well, first of all, if it's a product that the brand purchased on, from someone to provide to the properties, shame on the vendor. Hands down, right? So if you're a vendor who got a big brand buy and you didn't do everything you could to get full deployment and full adoption, it's not the brand's fault. Like, that's the vendor just didn't do what they should do. It's a more difficult thing to talk about when you're talking about like initiatives and things like that, because some of it's going to be project management. In the project plan, was there a thought of how do we get X thousands or even X hundreds of businesses to do this? And I see too many cases where that's not all the way brought through. It's not brought to how's it going to get trained, and who's going to train the trainers, and what type of material is going to be made available, what kind of carrot and stick arrangements going to exist, because unfortunately carrot and stick is needed in almost everything. Because there are just a lot of set it and forget it businesses. And it's very prevalent in this industry. I actually shared an article today that I thought was really good about the top 10 mistakes hotels websites have. And like number 10 was having a set it and forget it mentality. And it's like, yes. That's a tough one. Like, whose fault is it? Well, everyone can point at everyone, because there's not just brands and not just hotels. There's also management companies.
Right.
And then, and then you have the complex, like, whose agenda wins? Is it the ownership group? Is it the brand, or is it the management company? And that's tough. And I think it's tough because first of all, who owns the guest? I think that's a question that doesn't come up enough either. Does the brand own the guest? Does the owner of the real estate own the guest? Does the operator inside the real estate own the guest? It's really hard. Like, this industry is really hard to teach to outsiders because of these crazy stakeholders. You never know who someone at a hotel actually works for. Do you work for Marriott? Do you work for a management company, or do you work for the ownership group?
Right.
Like, what are you? So I can't imagine how difficult it is to roll something out unless it's rolled out with a strong vision. Right. And so I do see a lot of brand initiatives again, and I've been in this industry long enough that I've seen lots of brand initiatives with strong vision that have been successful. And then I've seen, many more brand initiatives that have happened that there is no vision passed along with it. So if you don't tell people what the point is or the why did you go through this work, brand? I think that's also causing a problem. So project management, complexity in the actual business models, and then, missing vision are some things that can be looked at. And then, there's all the stuff I don't know about because I've actually never worked at a hotel. So,
but you know what, you and I quoted you on this. I quoted you a lot last week. I told you, or this week, I should say. One was that it's nicer to work with hotels that are run by hoteliers than it is to work with hotels that are run by asset owners or people that are not hoteliers. And I made that as a qualifying statement on the perspective that, just as you said, who owns the guest? In most conversations, and it's funny to talk to these people during budget season because it's a self-preservation mode that everybody seems to be existing in. They're either they get to keep the sand in their sandbox, or they get to avoid this scathing knife that cuts things away and so forth. But they're in this self-preservation mode. But nobody, and the reason why I made your comment about what you said, nobody talks about the core of what we're doing in this. Who's taking care of the guest? At the end of the day, out of all this conversation about checkboxing, well, we as a brand provided you these services, while ownership saying to the property, I provided these resources to you. and the property saying, we're providing the answers that you're asking to questions. Out of that whole dialogue, the guest, it's almost like we could draw a cartoon. The guest is standing off to the side saying, and who's checking me in? Or something like to that effect. You know, it's kind of like there is no consideration of there's some property ownership groups that are militant about who owns the data about their guests. There are certain brand flavors like that too. And then there's others who don't even have it as a part of their conversation.
Right.
They're not even talking about it. They're just talking about functionality, form, and value. And the value is not to the guest. The value is to the ownership person that has the building. Like, look at how much of return on value had for you. And you know, it came up in budget conversations where it's like, at this time of year, budgets usually get suspended going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
That if the profit roll is good enough, then you risk somebody coming down into your department and saying, "Have you spent this line item yet?" No, good. You're not going to.
Yeah,
but wait,
it's gone.
Yeah, no, we're gonna optimize our ratios by the end of the year so that we really look good to the owners or really look good to the public, you know, to the stockholders or whatever, rolling into next year. Don't worry, you'll get it back next quarter. And you're sitting there going, this money is for business for next quarter, for first quarter. You know, we got to spend it now for first quarter profitability. And it's all a matter of numbers and dollars. And it's not about, well, that campaign or program would have been a success to the customer. So, you know, I quoted you for a different reason, but for the same purpose, which is if you keep the core of the customer in mind, that's a hotelier. If you're keeping the asset value in mind, then you're just an asset manager at that point. So
listen, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you completely accept that as a business. See, that's the thing is like to complete that thought process. There's nothing wrong with you being one or the other. The difference is you need to make sure you operate that way.
Right.
So you can get by on not being guest focused and being asset focused, but your asset's got to be special. People won't notice if it's just amazing. Right. And then, you know, same way, if your asset isn't special, like if you are really just a box, then you probably should strongly consider being incredibly customer focused first. You know, the customer always has to be thought about at some point because they're the people who you're trying to remove money from. You know, so you do have to eventually build bridges and relationships and things like that. But when you're looking at more high level focus and things like that, depending on the situation, sure, customer can be line item number 2. They can't be more, like they can't be like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But you know, there can be a, hey, first it's this, and then second it's this. Right. But then you have to operate that way, and your staff needs to understand that. Otherwise, you get these weird multiple personality fits and spurts in your efforts, and you end up spending a lot more than you need to.
No, and you made a point way back. Well, we all talked about was consistency of effort too. It's just being persistently in line with what it is that your mission statement. And unfortunately, and this came out in conversation also as they were talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. You have your advocates within your properties or within your brand that have a vision, but they don't seem to rally enough of the troops or shift the entire direction of the company or brand in that direction. They tend to be that outcast or that variant that nobody can really attack because in the purity of things, they're trying to do the right thing. But in the scope of political hierarchies and politics and self-preservations, they'll never win the argument. The good guy does not win that argument. They simply either run out of steam or get caught into a box they can't get out of or something, and they end up being that person off to the side, and they're just kept that way. It sounds so dramatically painful. I'm sorry. It sounds negative to the whole process. Anybody in your
You're worked up today, by the way. I've noticed. You're just like the establishment, the man is
holding us down, man. The man's holding us down. But it is funny because at this retreat, I'm sitting there around the tables, and my frustrations go twofold. One is, of course, some people can't talk about what they really know, which is inherently known. I mean, brands have skunk works going on and so forth. They know the future of some things that they can't discuss, and they know it impacts the discussion, but they can't say. Then you have those who are similar in concept, whether they be agencies competing and looking at each other across the table as agencies. Oh, by the way, I met Dave Spector from Tambourine.
He's a great guy, isn't he?
He is. I had a great conversation with Dave. I told him, I says, dude, you got to get on this show.
Yeah,
you got to
does.
hang out with us and talk a little bit, because he had some really cool ideas.
Yep.
And he had the same kind of scoffing attitude that I had through this whole process. It's like, come on, guys, if you took 5 minutes of reality, we'd be really past this topic by now.
Yeah, I like Dave. I really like his vision, and he's like us. He's no nonsense and just calls it like it is. And
Yep.
you either love him for it or you don't, and he's he's okay with it.
And that's the cool part about it. We sat together more often than that. We sat together for dinner, and then we sat together during most of the sessions. Then we're taking on one of the projects, which is revamping the Knowledge Center and the benchmarking studies, which is the benchmarking studies. As much as they want them, they could never get critical mass. They could never get enough people to participate.
Right.
And so he and I and a couple others are taking that on, and also the Knowledge Center, since we are turning into the source for the Knowledge Center. By the way, we're quite popular, well known.
That's scary.
We are the vision. We are, we are the voice of the people. Yeah. No, we are turning into the content source of this. And I got buy-in from Europe and from APAC that they're going to want to participate in the new shows.
Great.
That they want to do. So all good for that. So but people were very happy about our product. We have more watchers than we're aware of, because a lot of it goes into rerun. And so so they watch the replay more than they watch the live, which I want to change. I want to get that. And I also kind of held people. Our next week's call, as a matter of fact, with the council is still on track, and it is literally entirely about this show.
Cool.
And so
be prepared.
Yeah. See, you're banging me up. I felt so good. An hour I've been messing with this camera stuff, thinking this works, and at the end of the day, it's like, nope, no, didn't work. Didn't work. Thanks. That's all good. And poor Dean. Dean, I talk to him live every day for whatever reason, just about every day, and never has he had a video issue until now. So, Dean, if you're still hanging around in the wings looking at our conversation, what the hell happened to your internet, dude? But anyway, okay, so. With that in mind, the council is more than eager to have us expand our content. They don't know what to do with this 24-hour, 7-day-a-week thing that we got floating around out there. I don't know what to do with it either. I did want to ask you, okay, out of our conversation, who, from a scalability point of view, I mean, you have individual examples of success, but who, from a scalability point of view, is doing it at least in the right direction? Big brand, moderate brand, soft brand, cluster of hotels. Who do you think is beginning to understand how the pieces actually work together and are pointing themselves in the right direction?
The lucky ones. And I say the lucky ones, they're like G6. I like what they're doing. But they're lucky because they got to like basically hit reset. So like good. And it's easy to say that, hey, they can do that because they hit a reset button. There's a lot of good work. I mean, there just is. And I think the challenges you see are exactly what you were talking about before, which is sometimes the best stuff isn't winning because it's not being supported by the correct political authority inside an organization. Gosh, I mean, who's doing it well? I like the soft brands that all the brands have. I think they're a nice mix. I think they're doing the soft brand approach well. But no one who is living in the world of old and new can I say is killing it and being super advanced. But again, it's because they're hampered by the past,
right?
And like project wise, the ones I think are most interesting, it's not worked out well for the business model. So like I think about Starwood and their innovations. And how they've always been very innovative, but it didn't translate to earnings.
No.
So, who's doing it well versus who's successful in it isn't always lined up either. I think the OTAs are doing it great. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but they are.
They're doing it smart. Well, our news article, which we're going to jump to, I think is an absolutely excellent example of excellent forward thinking from the OTA perspective and readapting what it is that their value proposition is. But to go back to one statement I made earlier this week at the retreat, and I wonder whether you agree or disagree with it. I made a pound on the desk kind of statement saying that for those of you who are going through mergers, which seems to be the trend in our industry at this time, you're missing an amazing bubble of opportunity to reinvent yourself in a direction that's best suited to your success. And instead, you're worried about individual self-preservation, cost savings, and overuse of people that know what they're doing, but unfortunately can't tackle the world by themselves.
Yep. Listen, if I was running a brand today, I'll tell you who I'd be looking at. I'd be looking at top brass that I could try and recruit from Facebook, from Google, from Amazon in specialty fields and bring them in as like heads of skunkworks divisions on how to change everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is an opportunity. If you look at, since everyone's going asset light these days, or that's been the shift, is to go asset light. What is a brand? It's an OTA with plus, right? So it's a full service instead of just distribution and marketing. It's also standards and ordering and savings, and you can get financed and all of that stuff. But let me ask you this. I mean, like, what brand do you think is really experience-wise on par with an OTA? Can you think of one that markets themselves and has a user experience as strong as an OTA?
No, I can't.
Right.
You're right. No.
And that's a problem. So if you're going asset light, what are you? You don't own hotels. You manage some hotels. That's great.
Right.
But even in those numbers are small compared to the overall franchise footprint of the big brands. So if you're trying to figure out what you are, I'd be trying to figure out how to be different. And the way you be different is you bring in success from fields that know nothing about travel, and you circle your best of hospitality. Because that's one thing I will say the brands have. The brands are rich in hospitality skill sets. They have people who are, foundation of hospitality. So circle those people around, people who know what they're doing in consumer behavior, in forward thinking of, macro trends, and, someone who had to think through, like, whoever designs iPhones. And I know that sounds crazy, but think about what you have to think about when you design an iPhone. You can't use a material that you're not completely certain that there's enough of it on the earth, because you're going to sell so many that even if you use a gram per device, you may deplete the Earth's resource of that type of material. So that type of complexity, someone who can think through that type of complexity would be very good for some of these larger, older organizations that are really trying to, either keep their piece of the pie or reinvent their piece of the pie. They're all in different stages of it. But I don't see anyone reaching out to other industries that have basically taken over the world. Like anyone senior in Facebook, they have more impact in a minute than some of these brands do in months to the world. Well, so like the brand's problems would be tiny to these people. Bring these people into this industry. Let's change that way. That's where you can get behind having, real catalysts for change from the big organizations. From the small organizations, I kind of go the complete opposite of be super hospitality focused. You're a single hotel owner or even a couple hotel owners, be hospitality, and then hire really smart people at the things that are outside of hospitality. So hire the best, and the best is not always hospitality.
Right. Well, because you're going to get the same similar framed answers. I mean, I know I've said this before in other shows and so forth. When I used to be GM, I used to hire people specifically that weren't in the hotels group prior, if I had to have choice, because they gave the perspective from the guest, because we get tainted in our own excuses, being familiar with the industry, that when we walk up to our front desk and nobody's there to meet and greet us or check us in, we'll look at the clock and say, oh, it's shift change or whatever. We'll have some technical reason why we understand why we may be facing this challenge, where for their perspective, they look at it and go, well, this isn't good service. There's nobody at the front desk. They don't have the the tainted perspective of understanding what the possibilities might be, why something isn't working. They just see that it isn't working, and that is the purity of the problem. So yeah, to that point. But then you bring up a very good point to it too, is that without the empowerment of the real power behind an ownership group or the runners of the organization, those projects turn into pet projects or concept checkboxes that say, okay, well, I put a think tank together and they were giving me some crazy out of the box stuff. And it's like, but none of it was really intended to be implemented. It was really just to say,
but hold on. I mean, here's the thing. The people who own these brands are the same people who own these companies. They're investors.
You would think.
Like, you do have to look at that. Like, like public companies are public companies. So when you're reporting to the street what you're doing and what your future is, I can't see you getting a huge ding for bringing more successful models, the people who built those, into your fold to make you more successful.
True.
Right?
True. If they see it that way, a lot of times they see it as a self-preservation, as an answer to somebody above them, I think, where it's like, well, what did you do about this? Well, we brought these really smart people over here and asked them to think about different ways for us to do stuff. Well, did they come up with stuff? Yeah, but it meant us doing a lot of expensive changes. Oh, okay. Because, I mean, you're still trying to, like you said, fit it into the tools that you have. You're still trying to fit it into the context.
There are CEOs of brands that can pull off that. I mean, there are CEOs of brands that can completely sell that vision. We have some great CEOs in this industry right now that could sell that vision. And again, it's easy to sit in my chair and say, why aren't you doing this? But I mean, to me, I look at some of the personalities and I'm wondering, like, first of all, are you happy? Are you happy with your tech stack? Are you happy with your customer experience? Have you thought about your customer experience lately? Is anyone thinking about your customer experience end to end? And if they are do you put tinfoil hats on them and hide them in the corner? Like, what's going on here? Like, does anyone not do a sanity check? Like, let's do an audit of an experience of booking through Expedia. Let's compare that to our experience, like from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how easy was it to find? Do we have enough hotels in the markets to, be able to truly compete? Is there enough differentiation between our hotels and the markets to be enough to satisfy a consumer's desire to understand their options? Is our, experience in line with, the best? And the best isn't right now any hotels. The best are the OTAs. That's why everyone's so afraid of them and so up in arms about them. Okay, so it kind of seems simple. As step one is get on the same level with the ones that you're most afraid of. So how do you do that? Well, you bring in strategy people. And I'm not saying strategy people, young kids out of Harvard with spreadsheets. I'm saying people who actually can identify and dissect what's actually happening in a consumer experience and just audit it.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing that's making them so great versus us? Like, you should be willing to ask that question. Why are they better than us at this?
I was scared by one statement that was made. By the way, thanks for balancing my cynicism today. Because I'm being
always
very
happen to
cynical
be on the opposite side of the table.
That's it. I was that way on the other side. It's like when I started disagreeing with Sean out of Marriott or Chris out of IHG or Chris out of Hilton stuff. I hate to disagree, but I enjoy that. I enjoy that position. But
because they're all going, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
You should actually start with, I love to disagree. So
I love to disagree with this. So let me start. Yeah. Sorry, my point with it. They were talking about the fact that as a trend, they're looking to hire more data managers. And at first I thought, well, that's good, them understanding their data. But then I go back to something we had talked about that said, if you know the number of your email list, you don't have to worry about big data because you don't have it yet. There's no big data is a what was it? Well, you said it. What was the term that you referred to? If big data is not big data, if you're in some criteria, you said something that made perfect sense.
Well, big data. The definition of big data is you have so much data that you can't use it all. And then Tim had chimed in with the, big data is not big data if you know how much of it there is.
Yeah, yes.
So first of all, when you want to disagree with anyone that's like doing big things, and before you disagree, just ask them why you're doing that.
A great question.
You'd be surprised at some of the answers. What's the goal?
For them, it's to patch over a leak in the dike. I mean, in all honesty, the way they answered a lot of the conversation, I didn't ask that specific question. It's a great question. Actually, that should be the first question that gets asked. But the way they described what they were doing was more about a reaction to a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding than it was for a purpose of why. I like asking the question. So if you get the answer to that question, what are you going to do with it? That's my other end of what I usually like asking is like, so if you do this survey or if you ask these questions or if you get this data, what are you going to do with the answer? I mean, what's the intent of the purpose of you going through this process? Well, if you don't have an idea of what you're going to do with it when you have the answer, and really their data hiring thought process is to understand what they don't know, to know what they don't know. And it's like, again, so what are you going to do with that data? What's the purpose of you knowing what you think you don't know about this data? What kind of data are you looking at for doing this? As a shout out to Citizen M, it was referred to by Google. It was referred to by brand. It was referred to by agencies. I'd say by independent hotel groups, but by agencies as a model of some successes related to the context of their referral, but primarily from a innovation of communication. The common theme of their referral to Citizen M was how it was engaging to the guest, that the experience wasn't tailored to the property. It wasn't experience tailored to the amenities or the technologies or the theme or the destination. It was about the value proposition of their communication to the guest.
Yep.
That was probably the most persistent thing. So
yeah, and Citizen M is great. I mean, if they're starting to use that as the measuring stick, that's a great measuring stick.
Yeah, but not often duplicatable. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And you look at Citizen,
just no one
I've seen lots of,
I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can't fail that. It's just, you have to be willing to do what it takes to do it. And then you also can't have ADD with it. So that's the other challenge. Like, and this is a challenge of public companies. This isn't a challenge of just, hotel companies. Public companies tend to lack true long-term vision. They only tend to be allowed to have long-term vision when they're killing it today. But the problem is like that balancing act of being able to put up the street's expectations consistently while also serve a 10, 15, 20-year plan. And if you're ever on the ropes, it's incredibly hard to get off the ropes. Again, look at Starwood. So, and the only reason I bring this up is, Citizen M, again, they started with that focus. They never changed from that focus. They are very, very guest centric. They know who they are. They know what they are. And because of that, they're able to do things that other companies can't. But the only reason other companies can't is because there's this lack of singularity. They won't accept what they are. And part of it is because by selecting what you are, you eliminate certain audiences of interest in the investor world.
Sure.
If you say you're this, like, oh, I don't invest in that stuff, I'm out.
I had that conversations on two levels. One was I got quoted by somebody else, which I thought was pretty cool, when I said that publicly traded companies have to win the lotto each week. They cannot make the wrong numbers choice.
Yep. Because
to do so is to fail. They can't. They always have to win, even if it's not winning big. They always have to win. They can never not pick the right numbers.
Right.
And it does a disservice to their creativity, because one of the successes that I've noticed with Citizen M is I remember a lot of stuff that they've done that didn't work. But that's where they learned from what they didn't do well and did it better the next time they did it. It's one thing to fail. That's inherently learning. To fail it twice in the same thing is not learning from it.
Right.
And they do a very good job of trying stuff and measuring the constant, what we talk about with marketing, even just the constant testing of what you're doing to whether or not that persistent success remains or whether you have to keep changing it. And we know we do. We always have to change it. When as soon as you make a website, you're changing the website. It's never done. When you change make your campaigns, you never finish. It's always a constant modifications. And so I think Citizen M, the biggest thing I've ever learned from them was what they've done well, because what they've done, they've also done wrong. Right.
And so they live by a very common startup mentality, which is fail fast.
Yep. And I think they do exceptionally well at it. And I think that's why they're able to be that person referred to now, is because, or entity to be referred to, is because their success has been learned from the things that they didn't, that they tried in part that didn't work well for. But
Yep.
Yeah. It's to that point that I think that public agencies, and that goes to the self-preservation model as well. Nobody wants to give the wrong idea,
right?
And nobody wants to be hung over their neck. The lack of commitment from a lot of people is because they don't want to be held responsible should it fail. But by the same token, if it does succeed, any little thing that you hinted that you had a preference for it, if you amplify that to the nth degree to show that it almost literally came off of your desk,
right?
It's just fun to see those things. And I say that in reference to this show and so forth, as to, wow, I didn't know so many people were involved with this, but that's good.
And it won't change how we talk.
We are not making much more changes on this one, but it won't change for it. But anyway, so I know I dragged that out a little bit longer.
No, I think it was good. First of all, Boca Resort, that's where it was at, right?
Yep.
Great property, isn't it?
It is. I got lost twice, and I don't often get lost, but I got lost twice.
Were you in the pink building?
We're in the tower. We're in the tower for our dinner, and we had the reception at the base of the tower between it and the main building, and then our actual conference was in the old conference section when you first walked through the lobby and went straight.
Yep.
It's funny you bring that up because you travel a tremendous amount, and when you do stay at brands, you can literally walk into a brand and know what level their FF&E has been updated on, just because of the historical recycling of their changes and so forth. When you go into a Boca Resort, I mean, the Waldorf Astoria. Okay, first off, it's the Waldorf Astoria doesn't denote a FF&E frame of mind; it denotes a service frame of mind, which I always thought was nice, and like a Ritz-Carlton thing. But you go in,
listen, Robert's not on, or a Four.
We have to say Four Seasons.
Right.
No show. Okay, new rule: no show can pass without the term Four Season or Cornell.
Right.
We just have to say the words, all right? We're going to get indexed for both of those words.
Yes.
I want to make sure they're in every tag thing we do. Four Seasons and Cornell, we're going to be showing up for every time when we tag this thing. But yes, it is. It's a no service. But you walk through parts of the resort, and it's stunningly beautiful. Stunningly beautiful.
The tile work, the original furniture just open up behind ropes. I mean, yeah.
And the column work, the colonnades, the archways.
Yeah.
Just absolutely stunning stuff. And then you go into the low ceiling intersections and so forth, and you realize they are so trying to keep because little things like there's not internet in most of the resort. There's no Wi-Fi internet access. There was none in the conference rooms and so forth. And anybody else, it would have been a no deal for most conferences.
Right.
Just wait, I need internet. I got a conference there. Not there. Actually, it's looked as a positive. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know what? You're paying attention at this conference because you're not connected unless you have good cell phone reception to your data plans. You're here for being here. Mm-hmm. It is actually, I think, a interesting. Wow, you know what? Not having internet is a positive if you think about it, where you don't have it as an option. So, but yeah, it really was. The resort itself, amazing. The spread of it. Yes, you can see its age. Some good, some bad. But then you see the classiness and the quality of some things, and you're just blown away by the fact they did a neat little thing. They have a little section in their lobby staged out with soft light boxes, and a logoed backdrop, back screen for their Instagram program. Contest for the Instagram program. And I thought that was a nice touch. And I thought when I first walked in the first night, they had nobody was there. And I thought, oh, well, maybe this isn't as successful as it was. Wrong. Came in the next day, there was a line of people waiting to go get their picture put on Instagram, probably because of the contest, but more because they get to say they were there. I mean, they're at the Boca Resort. Come on, they want a picture. And it's well lit, nice backdrop. I thought it was a nice touch to the day. I did way back in the day. There was a Lumbo Key Hilton, and there was a parrot that was always in the lobby. It was owned by one of the front desk people, and it was a novelty that people came in because the parrot would talk and so forth. And this goes back 06, 05 or whatever. And to post yourself, I went over and asked the front deskers, would you mind moving the parrot stand over to the view through a big screen window that looked out over the beach and everything behind it that you saw, and put lights up and have your picture taken that says, I'm here, where people were saying, look at me, I'm here. It goes back a few years. But anyway, and then we would send it out for them because not everybody had the means to do it at the time. Right.
Not everyone had massively powerful computers in their pocket.
So we would send it out via whatever emails list that they happened to give us to send it to. Thank you for the emails.
Yes.
And we would send it out for it.
It's funny no one does that anymore, huh?
No, he does that now. No. But But
anyway, so
new stuff.
Yeah, let's go to your Skiff 200. And,
Okay.
I have a huge issue with that. Like, sometimes I look at some of the things Skift does, and they do some great stuff, but sometimes I look at the stuff they do and I'm like, you're not helping the industry. Like, there are complete Goliaths missing in some of these, in this Skift 200. And if you notice, and I'm only saying it, and Skift, please correct me if I'm completely off base here, but you don't see those Goliaths advertising on Skift.
Exactly. And there's the classification issue I have a problem with too.
Right. And they really should be like kind of calling out if that is happening, because like there were entire, like, where you're looking at massive footprint too. Like, they missed massive footprint providers in this Skift 200, and then they put in rando startups that have no footprint.
Okay. Like, so who was the biggest one you thought got missed?
TravelClick was completely missing. Completely missing. Like,
oh my God, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like, my gosh. It was just the first one I saw, and then there were many others missing. And listen, to be fair, to map this industry is incredibly difficult, and I get that. But my gosh, like, everyone at Skift knows this industry, knows who the big players are, so that no one went through and did a sanity check of like, oh, are we like degrading the value of this by completely ignoring the massive, presence of certain players? Nah, let's not do that. So, and Skift does that from time to time. Like, they are what I consider like the Fox News of our industry. It's all so.
I throw HubSpot into that categorization as well, unfortunately, and I know that
HubSpot it's their blog, and it's meant to sell you marketing automation software. At least they're honest about, we sell marketing automation software. But I look at Skift. And we talk about it here a lot. It's actually why we don't advertise on Skift. But I look at Skift, and the potential of being a legitimate news source for this industry for them is massive.
Of course,
But they take this approach that, first of all, I don't trust anything I read on it unless I read it somewhere else as well, because I don't know if it's an advertorial. I don't know why it was written. And I don't know if it was written through the lens of like everything else that actually exists in this industry. Which a lot of times their stuff doesn't. So the Skip 200, when I looked at it, I just looked at it and I was like, come on, you're not even trying to hide the fact that you're completely ignoring massive players in this space. And again, Skift, not trying to call you out. I think you guys are, have the potential to be like the most legitimate news resource. And I think if you either put disclaimers on your stuff so you're not incorrectly educating people, or try and at least make sure that the big obvious ones make it into these things, because it's big and obvious. Like, it erodes the value of that 200.
I agree with you completely about Skift. I almost, and this is kind of weird. I mean,
oh, by the way, I'm fully aware that now Flip2 will never be spoken about on Skift. Will be, and it won't be great.
I know that hospitality digital marketing is such a massive footprint in the industry that, I accept the snub like TripAdvisor. I mean, not TripAdvisor, but TravelClick or something, but I'll live with it. No. My impression of this is similar to yours. It's like the blatant omission of some of those, the blatant miscategorization of others.
Yeah.
And then the token offering of passive endorsement of no-name, non-footprinted,
buddies of Skift.
Yeah, that I'm sitting there going, are these friendly startups that you just want to see that you can bring into the spotlight because you threw them into a spiralgram? Those three things. But to your point, when you read Skift, it's like reading T News, like reading Hotel News Now and so forth. They followed, I think, an unfortunate pattern of the Huffington Post world. And that is, get to it first, get to it fast, and worry about accuracy later, or substance later, even substance. Yep. Sometimes these postings go up, and there's literally, I can find the old article of word for word reposting of something from months ago because it was the only reference point to the topic that they sensationalized the headline for, so that they could say they legitimately put out the content first. And I'm sitting there going, dudes, to your point, Skiff, you can be a really great news source, an authoritative news source, if you really thought that to be the focus rather than the sensational. My other contention to the reason why I want to throw this in the news part of it is that the abnormal amount of attention that this chart. Remember Bruce Clay's search spaghettigram that he originally came up with way back in the day about who was feeding search results to whom, back when you still had prodigies of the world and so forth floating out there, and Google was just one of many things that were out there, and it turned into the Bible of SEO. You had to make sure that you covered the dots on the Bruce Clay chart to make sure that your content was being distributed into the organic world. And now there's the local spaghettigram, which is still no better than it was when it was first made. It doesn't answer anything. It just shows you how weirdly convoluted the connections are. This, I hope, doesn't go that route where it turns into the progressive, updated reference point of categorizations of companies and their relative value within the space that Skift has now turned into the authority of deciding. I hope it doesn't go that way. I hope it's a great.
I hope it does go that way because they'll make a ton of money off of it.
Oh yeah. But the volume of traffic they're getting off of it is phenomenal. The references within news is phenomenal. The shares are phenomenal.
I know, and it's a pity because it sets everyone back. And listen, I'm always clear here. I give my opinion, and my opinion is my own. That's all you have to do, Skift, is like literally add that to each of your articles, that this is someone's opinion and is not completely based in reality. Because my opinions are often not based in reality.
The opinions expressed on this show are the views of those that are participating. Yeah, no, but
it's important to understand, like, because I think there are people, and I know there are people, like, let's look at who votes. There are people who take this stuff for face value. And that's dangerous. Like, that's incredibly dangerous, because if it's not clear that this is opinion or is just ignorant of things that exist outside of it, it is dangerous. It sets people back. It sets people on incorrect paths. And honestly, like you said, some of the random focus on some of these tiny startups, I feel bad for the owners of those startups because they probably think this is great, but it may put a nail in your coffin.
How do you think? I mean, I'd love to.
By putting them in the same league as some of the ones that did make it on there, and the circle sizes, again, I know it's hard to visualize and do all these things, but the circle sizes make some of these small startups look a lot bigger than they are.
Now I understand. Yes.
And so, I'm sure they were excited to get the coverage. I'm sure they were excited to be mentioned in 200 and, all of that stuff. But be cautious about what comes from it, because there are expectations set when you're put on a map with someone else who's got expectations set up a lot higher with
bandwidth and history of performance and client relationships. That you're right. No, I didn't understand when you first said it. I'm thinking, well, for me it'd be wow, I get mentioned on that, and all of a sudden because of it I get all this traffic. But expectation level of people calling, they're thinking because of the size of the circle that you got generously given means that you're of that scalability, and you and your friend that are sitting around the table at the Starbucks aren't quite that company. But it goes also things like travel click stats. If you notice, like some of the Skift articles that are similar in context to T News articles, you begin to see the same authors parallel each other, like they're almost watching each other or complementing each other, or I wouldn't say collaborating, but following the same vein of conversations or thoughts or interests and stuff. And that's usually been turning into my de facto, because nobody's mentioned the fact there used to be an integrity of reporting, which died when Cronkite no longer was on the screen, I guess.
No, the problem is like there are still some, they're just not as popular. Right. I like reading Hospitality Upgrade.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they bring professionals in to talk about the things they're professionals in. But the problem is it just doesn't get the same razzle dazzle that the TMZ style of Skift gets.
There, you said it. That's what you said it better than I was trying to phrase it. The TMZ style news, where it's not about whether it's accurate, it's just whether it's popular.
Yep.
And being first means value, and being referred to means value, and getting volume of traffic means value. And it's not so much the accuracy that drove it, it is the TMZ popularity of it. You know, what caught people's eye about this? This was a chart that somebody low on a food chain could run into somebody higher in a food chain and flop around on a piece of paper if they printed it and said,
"Look what I found! Look what I found!"
This. Yeah, I got a guide now. I didn't even know about these little companies down here. Let's call them up and see if they can do what these big companies do, because their circles are almost the same size. Yeah. In that sense, it's a shame that I don't think there's anything we can necessarily stop on, especially on a program. Even if we had thousands that followed us on a daily live basis, I don't think we could stop.
Listen, anyone who watches this, keep reading their stuff, because there is some value in it, as long as you understand that it's not necessarily 100% accurate to reality.
Right.
It's accurate to the reality that they're recognizing in the point of view that they're trying to get across. Because I don't think they lie. I'm not going to say like I think that they're lying or anything like that. I just think they're, positioning the variables in such a way to allow them to get a point across, or put someone in a spotlight, or get lots of readership or picked up, and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, not to turn this into a political statement, but even in the world of higher stakes conversations like fact checking presidential candidates, you have those that even when presented with the facts will deny it as being conspiracy theory, contrived things. And even though you can show that somebody says something exactly opposite, the same person that they're saying said it this way, and yet they will deny it as saying, well, that just got pulled out of the air. That didn't really happen. Even in the world of that, these things don't often get checked. I mean, you figure what they say, 64% or 67% of all people see news on Facebook first. And you meet it with this, but hopefully most people, which may not be true, meet it with a point of skepticism that before they believe that Elton John did die for the 5th time, that maybe you might want to check on some other sources other than the person that shared.
My favorite thing to do is comment on those posts with the Snopes link.
Perfect. I gotta start using that one more. I don't use that one enough.
Yeah, my network puts up with me. I don't know why.
Hey, one last news thing was just the Expedia Marriott Love Fest. Just to touch that, because both of us thought that was a highlight conversation as to that. Do you want to frame up exactly what the context of the relationship is?
Well, again, you read the article. And the articles make it sound like,
by the way. This is actually
makes it sound like Marriott's leaning on Expedia globally for packaging.
Yeah.
And it's not until you actually dig into it that you realize it's a Marriott Vacations Club deal, which again is a very different business unit than Marriott. Mm-hmm. I think it's smart. Expedia's got, Ian's got a really good network behind it. The Expedia technology that you can put into place is world-class technology that you don't have to worry about a lot of problems with. I'd be interested to hear the details of how that was negotiated. But I think I'm going to say it again, just like I said when we were talking about the Red Lion Expedia, their deal that they're doing. Expedia is incredibly clever, is changing with the times, and is looking at what they have that they can offer to the industry that is seen as enough value to drive the type of profit and growth that they need. I just caution everyone, just because Marriott's doing it doesn't mean it's right for you. It also doesn't mean that because it's Expedia, it's wrong for you. But you also have to understand it's not going to be free. Like Expedia is going to make money off of it, and you shouldn't be mad at them for doing that.
I'm pulling up. There's a statement they made within the article itself that I thought was interesting. From not being identified as a distributor, Expedia's mission statement to the idea is not. Why does it keep kicking me off of this link now? Anyway, it was something about saying that instead of being looked at simply as
was it a skip link? Because then we've already been blacklisted. I mean,
the skip link. We have already been removed from the process. And for the record, Skip, I do read your articles. I just read them.
I read them too.
With a big pile of salt and a little bit of reaffirmation on other sources before I start validating that what's being said is gospel. But yeah, I read it every day. I get tagged every day. But no, the Expedia relationship, and I have had firsthand experience with Marriott Vacation Club from agency life. And they were the redheaded stepchild for so long. They had been treated as the redheaded stepchild for so long. And then all of a sudden, with the Airbnb growth and so forth, all of a sudden attention was paid, but they were never given resources. Right. Seriously, never given resources. There was a handful of 5 that ran the entire system in one function or form. It was that limited as to what they really could do internally compared to the mammoth Marriott system entirely. It almost seemed like a joke that it even existed in that world. And they were always struggling for identity, presence, resources, findability, searchability, and so forth. And then Marriott all of a sudden paid the eye of Sauron on them kind of thing and gave them the blessing of attention. And now all of a sudden this comes out of that. And I used it as a kind of a whipping stick when we were in the thing this week, the retreat, that Marriott was so much about providing services and in-product resources, and yet puts in the news while we're talking an actual outside collaboration with a quasi-competitor relationship that they themselves swore to be more value proposal to their franchise relationships than somebody like that. And here they are creating relationships, albeit different for the vacation resorts, but still in the context of hospitality, their name is on the banner.
Yeah. Welcome to business though. I mean, how often do you see Apple and Samsung suing each other? And yet Samsung is one of the largest providers of Apple manufacturing processes. And you have to wonder, like, how do these meetings go? Yeah. Where it's like, oh, that's a different department. So we're good. We're friends.
Well, we both know
try to keep that department out of like what you're doing for us, at least for 3 months, to give them a little bit slower of a go to market to steal our paths. And I mean, listen, you get to a certain size, it's inevitable. You have to be frenemies. But I think it's actually clever, and as long as it remains somewhat equitable for both sides, it's actually a good thing, because Expedia's tech is really good. Yeah, they spend a lot more in it than any hotel company does.
Well, I think, and I forget who mentioned, maybe you, maybe Rob, maybe Tim, maybe somebody we had. I'm not sure, but there was one statement that was made that the OTAs have to prove their viability or their worth every day. And yet brands take the attitude that they have the product and it's up to them to decide what they find important in any given day.
Yeah, because the OTAs are treated like any other company in this world, where the brands are treated like hotels.
Yeah. They come in with a different calling card to the process. You and I both know people in the industry, you probably more so than me, where they have been doing things together, and yet they're suing the crap out of each other on so many different levels because of who they are. I mean, not to name company names, but large connection type companies. And they're in the room, and they're the best of friends personally, but they have 15 stacks of legalese that are being fighting back and forth, and lawyers and so forth, that they're like, we're not going to talk about that. Let's just talk about us stuff, And you're sitting there, and I'm in amazement that people can do that. That I'm out to destroy you legally. I am chasing you down for way more money than it's probably even worth it to me to do, but I'm doing this because I have to. But meanwhile, let's go grab lunch. I just find that, to me, that's the amazing compliment to their personalities, that people can exist in those worlds. That's business. This is us. Let's just do this. I just find that pretty neat. I find it pretty neat.
It is.
But to the point of it, I think it's really, this is one that I'll actually be positive about. I think it's a huge benefit to the Vacation Marriott model, because I think that they were underserved by their previous vendor. Something Fly, I forget what it was, Switch Fly, I think it was. I think there was a previous vendor for it. And they were just providing connectivity functionality. They really weren't providing a value proposition. Here now, with Expedia's massive ability to aggregate all of the benefits of creating package opportunities with the inventory from Marriott, I think it's going to be a massive win for them, I think, in that sense. So I think it really changed. I think it's a good blend. I think it's a smart move on their part for it. So, but yeah. That's it for I had for news. I knew I wasn't going to talk about tech. I feel bad that Dean couldn't join. Dean, we'll just have to figure out how to come.
Go to a coffee shop or something, and
grab some. Well, they have coffee shops now, right? Yeah.
Or go to a steak shop or something.
Steak shop. Go to a steak shop. Yeah, they're supposed to be there. Just as something for there is on my website, hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. All of Dean's webinars that he was going to point to are on it at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/metasearch. And I don't know whether I've ever mentioned before, but he did a series of what is Metasearch webinars. And it's no sales pitch to the DerbySoft program. It's just educating what Metasearch is. the platforms and so forth. And then he did a series on budgeting for 2017 MetaSearch, where he broke it down by platform: TripAdvisor, Google, Trivago, Yahoo, Kayak, and talked about the different nuances, Instabook versus just business modeling and display ads and stuff. So good stuff for it. And then if you're interested for any reason, because like I said, they've been clients of mine, so I did a bunch of work with them. I had two other things. I had a revenue calculator I made for them, but if you want to know what the potential revenue MetaSearch could provide your hotel type, you'd put in some information. It would give you a high, medium, and low revenue spectrum as to what you could expect for annual. And another was a MetaSearch map that if you were looking for budgeting purposes, what are the prevalent MetaSearch platforms in your country? It would show it in descending order of importance, what the MetaSearch platforms you should consider for budgeting purposes. So all of those are on hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I'll put them in the show notes for this. So if you want to go take a peek at it, like I said, it's not a sales pitch for DerbySoft. It's really an education stuff. And Gene, we'll get you back sometime when you have your internet, and we'll have you as a guest speaker for that. Any news? You had a couple of guest speaker potentials that we had floating out there. Do we?
I'm still working on them. I think people get a little bit camera shy. I actually think once they watch the show, I think they're like, do I want to be associated with these guys? What are they gonna say?
Who are they gonna bash now? Is Loren
super nice again? And I don't blame them. I mean, and we knew that would be a problem with people who work for larger organizations, is getting the approval of, well, what are you going to talk about? We don't know. We don't know. We make it up as we go along.
We talk when we talk. Yeah.
But I'm continuing to work on it. We'll see what we can get out of it. One thing I'd like to try and find is there are some really smart hoteliers out there that are doing things right. I'd love to have them on here to talk about, all right, how did you weren't where you are forever, so how'd you get them to move and change, and what was the process? I know it's going to be met with them saying it was somewhat painful or something like that, but I think that would be something great. So if you are a hotelier that shakes your head yes during this show and has had success in doing some of the things we talk about, I'd love to have you on this show.
I agree. And yes, it's not just to the vendor aspect of it. It's just really to the quality of the conversation.
Right.
For the first time, I got to watch.
You're funny, you're also welcome.
Yeah. Definitely be funny. I get to watch the show last week after I had to bow out for the first time as somebody that wasn't on the show the whole time. It was kind of fun to listen to you guys. First off, I got condemned by you all for being the one that made this show last so long. But last week's show was
we were all hiding behind you.
Last week's show was the longest freaking show, and I wasn't there for most of it. All right, I was there for an hour and I was gone, and you guys kept it for 2 hours and 23 minutes or something. The whole
first mistake is you allowed me to talk about myself,
which, by the way, I still and not just to ask this that was one of the best shows we had. I got more notes. If you look at my show notes that I wrote out of that, it's freaking 5 pages long, dude. I kid you not. If you look at the show notes I have of quotes,
you haven't realized I'm really good at talking about myself.
No, but you said some good stuff. You said some good stuff, man. It was really good stuff. And I quoted you this week, according to the Bible of St Onge, chapter 2 under degradation of your business, and I quote it.
And let it be said.
And let it be said, high and low. Was it the holy hand grenade? Count to 4, not to 3, not far enough. 5 is way out.
So speaking of which, if anyone else wants more of me talking about, I froze. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
So to those who want to hear more of me talking about things I like to talk about, next Thursday I'm speaking at the HSMAI Chapter of the Year, Arizona.
Yes, they won the award. I wasn't there for that. I was wanting to, with the air being out. I was going to attend the leadership conference all of Thursday yesterday, but the part came in and they said we could do it between 2 and 4, and I'm like, we'll be there at 2 to 4. So I drove back from Boca over here to Cape Coral to make sure, because my mother-in-law's with us from Holland. So it was really imperative that I got the air working by the time I brought her back to spend the week with us, because I got to go to DC for a conference next week. I'll see Max up there, actually. I get to go say hi to Max.
Yeah. Tell Max he should come on this thing.
Wouldn't you think that he would be first in line for this? Because talk about opinionated and perspective oriented. Max is one, and brilliant Al at the same combination. and we can argue with Max because there's lots of things to argue with Max about.
Yeah, but here's the fun thing: like, with as much as I disagree with him, I agree with him on other things. Like, it's almost like 50-50. And what I like about Max is he just puts it out there.
Yep. And and what he puts out there is what he believes. He just doesn't say the popular thing. He says what he truly is he backs his company behind. When he points to something, his whole company he built.
Puts his in quite often.
Yeah.
So try to convince him, and if he's on the fence, let me know, and I'll try and push him over.
All right, I will definitely catch him.
I'll just call him a chicken.
Yeah. Oh, that should get him going. Yeah.
So next week, HSMAI Arizona, and then I am on October 1st speaking at the Chief Conference in Puerto Rico on a panel about storytelling.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, Darlene Rondell from VFM.
Yes.
Was a guest. I
Great.
love Darlene. I have always an opinion about VFM, but I love Darlene. And she, when you mentioned storytelling, reminded me of that. She'd like to go over and be a guest speaker for it, which might be next week, depending upon how we all solve out.
Great. Oh, and I won't be on the show next week.
Well, then I might let her know that when we can do it, it'd be best if you, because really not in contrast, but in combination, it'd be interesting to have the two of you just have at the whole process of storytelling and its impact and stuff. Because she's been an advocate.
We're incredibly aligned.
Yeah, she's been a ardent advocate of it, the process. So it'd be like literally the show of storytelling and its value proposition to hotels. We can market as such. But so that's also I'm now talking to a group of people in New York, ironically, for an article snippet I had in Hotel's 50th anniversary, 80th Hotel Magazine's 50th anniversary September thing I got quoted in about the blind side of industry. So I'll let you know how all that conversation goes, because they're bringing up an interesting project they have about time-segmented reservations for red-eye travelers. So there might be some interesting I don't knows. But it was just kind of a weird trace of – it came up a conversation about a comment I made to you should talk to us more about what this project we're working on, and it sounded like a pretty interesting concept. So
cool.
If I can share it, I'll definitely do it. So you're not going to be with us next week.
No, I'll be traveling. I apologize.
It happens.
It does. I try not to do it.
I will not try to shame you into the fact that I will have my technology working next week better than I had it for you this week.
Well, you won't. You can't make that promise, because first of all, I can just watch the recording.
I will have it ready for you. This camera up here will be working fine, and I'm not going to try to do the wonderful backdrop of Florida weather.
Yeah, and something else will be broken, though. I mean, that's the charm of this show.
It is
that it's absolutely no beforehand effort. It's completely off the wall. Even when we try to organize ourselves, the end result is we don't. We don't. And it's a bunch of kids who really like this stuff, just basically willy-nilly throwing out whatever pops into their head that second. Yep.
And there's a few hundred people that love watching us to do it. So it's all good in that sense. We get to go and do our own self.
And God love you, because
yes, well, this will stand up because of the Star Trek shirt, because I've been wearing my hospitality digital marketing shirt for weeks now. Finally washed it, changed it out with this one, so we're all good.
I'm actually starting to get up on Friday mornings and looking at last week's episode going, all right, I just want to not wear the same exact blue shirt as last time. I'm going to pick a different blue shirt.
Oh, yeah, but you're in the Zuckerberg frame of mind. Why make choices when they're on a rack?
It's spreading through the organization, though. We just recently did shots of all the employees, and I just randomly picked my favorite blue shirt. And it turned out everyone else had some article of clothing almost that same exact color of blue. So who needs a dress code? If you're just consistent as the leadership,
they follow
people. Yeah.
Yeah. They see what you have and they end up wearing the same. I mean, but look, you got a comfortable dress code. If that's the case, polo shirts, any day, all day, I'll take that.
Polo shirts and shorts. I have an easy rule on how to choose what you wear. If I'm meeting with someone, it's easy. If they're asking me for money, I wear whatever I want.
Yes.
If I'm asking them for money, I wear a suit.
Yeah.
And then every other day, it's polo shirt and shorts.
You know what? That is my ethos as well. If you're asking for me for something, it's like when I used to go to conference. I dressed comfortable. People were all dressed up for business. Like, I'm here for a conference, man. I'm here to learn stuff. I'm not here to sell stuff. Now, of course, when I go to conferences, different mindset. Got to look a little bit better because I'm asking for people for money. I'm out there. It's like, hey, I do this stuff. Go give me some money. All right. Well, ironically, just between the two of us, we pulled off an hour and a half of. No speaker. Yeah, no speaker. 2 news items and
only 12 minutes of technical difficulties. I mean, that's a great filler for us.
I think we've I think we've cut that down pretty well. I think we've done well. All right. So, if people, other than the fact of finding you in Phoenix next week, would like to go over. Oh, I get no. Oh, hold on.
Do not disturb is a thing.
Come on, stop. All right. Well,
now we're back to our normal quota of technical difficulties. You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much. We're here until Thursday. Try the veal. All right.
So if you want to find out about me, first of all, it's usually weekly on this show. Secondly, you can find me on any of the social platforms under my full name, Edward St Onge. You can find what I'm passionate about, flip.to. timpeter.com/flip2 is a nice page now. Thank you.
Real page, folks.
Real page. Yeah, and out and about.
Yep.
And how about you, Loren?
Well, for me, all the content that is for this show is always found on hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. There you can find all the previous episodes. We have a 24/7 show now. You can find it at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com /24 live, which plays all these shows round the clock, almost 2 full days of non-repetitive content.
So if you really want to ruin your weekend and binge watch every episode of it.
If you need sleep therapy, boom, instant solution. Get somebody out of a room, boom, instant solution. It's a multi-use product. And if you buy now,
you're trying to wear someone down to get them to share very important secrets. That's a great place to go.
If you want to go over and see whether or not your team is truly loyal, put them in a meeting room and play this over and over. Oh, good.
Start by telling them you think it's great.
Yes, and see how long they really last.
And for those of you who are nice enough to tell us that you do like what we do like to hear it, even though we know you're lying.
We'll accept the lie. We're good. Yep. We're beautiful. We're okay. Right. There is a podcast review of this as well. We'll review the show plus any parts that we may have missed, like tools and stuff, which I try to throw in there.
And then there's a wonderfully animated recap.
And I do a animated recap, which I will change the theme on at the end of this month. Just so you know, I'm not going to run this into the ground completely. I will be changing the animation theme so that it'll change up a little bit.
So what we're going to be turkeys?
No. Well, I had thought
about. Are we going to be pumpkin spice versions of ourselves?
I'm thinking maybe a little Halloween. Who knows? But there is an animation theme to it. I hope you appreciated the personalized character that I made for Tim for last week.
Yes.
I took some time and cut a face out of another animation and put his in there just for the joy of making him feel different. I'll slowly move through the process with yours as well. But yes, we do have a recap. All the show notes and links that we talked about, the articles and so forth, are in the show notes along with the podcast. All that's on hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. For everybody that did spend time with us today,
thank you.
Dean, we'll do the Matt Damon on you. Sorry we ran out of time. We'll see.
Matt Damon.
Next week's show. But yes, we'll get you back for another show because it's still very good content for us to discuss. So with that in mind, thank you very much. Ed, as always, thank you so very much. Sorry we'll miss you next week.
And the good usher of this show.
Yeah. And we'll see who shows up with us next week, Tim or Robert or what have you. But we may have Darlene Rondeau as our guest speaker. But I really would like to see if we can coordinate it while you're on the show because I think it would be a fascinating conversation to have you and Darlene both talk about the value of storytelling, both from your perspective and hers. And like I said,
I will do it in the form of story.
Stories, yes, stories.
Let me tell you a story about the impact of stories.
There's a story once I had about stories. Yeah, okay. Anyway, all right, Ed, have a great rest of the day. Thank you again, as always, for making it through the whole process and for an hour and a half. And for Tim and Robert, hey, see what you missed?
Could have been fun. Cornell, 4 seasons.
Yeah, I mentioned it. So thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you all next week.